Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm happy to see you today. Today we'll be covering and a topic that is quite interesting for me. It's the 6 reasons why I think it's important to look at how to migrate to open source Kubernetes and why that should be done. My name is Daniel Virassamy. I'm a principal cloud solutions architect, working for Mirantis for around 4 years now. As I say, today we'll be looking at the 6 reasons why it's important to at least think about migrating to open source Kubernetes. The first one is constraint choice is good, but this constraint, right? And why? What do I mean by this? This is the picture of the current CNCF landscape, and I kind of try to reduce that as much as possible. I couldn't, it obviously overspilled over the page. The have a lot of components for the database part, messaging, platform, observability, security, right? It's just increasing. And that's good. That means that the community is healthy, community is very lively and wants to add as many features and innovation within that landscape. But that also means that you do have that possibility in terms of integrating all these components. And many of them, if not most of them, are open source, right? And that just gives you a lot of options to select whether how you want to handle your network, how you want to handle your storage, how you want to handle your monitoring, how you want to manage policy and access control, etc., right? So you don't want to be locked into solutions that are selected by others and in which you don't get the required features. And that's one of the reasons that having that flexibility with open source is key, right? The second thing that I also do look into when I kind of look at how these Kubernetes open source solutions operate is where they run and how they run, right? And ideally, I would be looking at a solution which can run everywhere, any infrastructure, right? Not only on AWS, or not only on Azure, or not only on Google, or not only on VMware or OpenStack, or on-prem, right? Anywhere. That should be on any type of infrastructure. Why? It gives me, again, flexibility and not a feeling of lock-in. I can move around my cluster, thus my workloads inside these different environments. And this is important in terms of having the capability to improve my cost, improve the way that I'm delivering services, and the way that I'm integrating with other services that I do want to integrate with. It's also about the distribution, and here I named Linux, but it can also be Windows, right? So how what Linux distribution you would be selecting to run your nodes? Is it Ubuntu? Is it Red Hat? Is it SUSE? Is it Rocky? Right? Why should I only use Red Hat Enterprise? Why can't I use Rocky Linux, for example? Right? So this is also very, very important. And the last item is the choice of the distribution. I may want to use K0s, for example, or K3s, or MKE, right? So again, the choice of the distribution, and all these choices would allow you to have that feeling of being less locked into a very opinionated solution. The second is complexity hiding. A pretty web UI looks nice, but it doesn't make everything easy. And that one is very interesting, right? You can have, and you do have very pretty UIs. And these UIs are typically used to provide cluster CRUD, so create remove, update, delete, for the various clusters that you are creating. You can also add nodes using these capabilities, remove these nodes, update these nodes, so you manage your cluster, right? And you can do that with very good and fancy UIs. You can also have some of them providing application deployment and even build automation. But what would happen in the scenario where you are in a hybrid environment? And that's typically the case now. Many organizations have selected the route of multi-cloud. They want to have the option of running their workloads in the different clouds, whether it is on-prem, whether it is public. And on the public clouds, various public clouds, and on-prem, various environments, bare metal, VMware, OpenStack. These would also run at various scales, small clusters, clusters for one single developer, clusters for any integration team, clusters for production, clusters for testing, various scales of clusters and various features within these clusters, right? So you need to have a way of handling all these clusters in a proper way. And typically these fancy UIs that comes out of the box of these distributions do not offer that out of the box, right? They don't allow you to manage various environments through one single pane of glass. Management is also troubleshooting, logging, monitoring, and alerting. How do you get proper information about your clusters, the metrics, the logs that needs to be retrieved from these clusters and from the workloads that are running within these clusters. We also start to look at other services. So I did mention logging, monitoring, and alerting, but security. What is the security posture across all these clusters? How do I handle financial efficiency across all these different clusters, and how to make better decisions in terms of optimizing the cost of running these environments, right? And the last item is, how do I extend these UIs? Do I have a capability to customize, make it mine, right? Add the proper features that I need to handle my specific task, my day-to-day task, to improve my efficiency at work. So all of these are key with some of the modern UIs that we are looking for when it comes to handling these environments. And that's the reason why typically then Lens is one of the favorite choices on the market, right? It's one of the most loved project in the CNCF landscape. 20,000 plus stargazers, a lot of traction, very healthy community, and a lot of features being added continuously. Lens, as you know it, or if you don't know it, would provide you access to multiple clusters, whether it is on-prem or in the cloud. It will provide you access to clusters running on VMware, whether it is Tanzu, and actually there or other distributions that you will be running on VMware, or whether it is OpenShift with some work, obviously, because it's not out of the box, and then on all the other standard Kubernetes distributions, whether it is Mirantis Kubernetes Engine, K0s, K3s, Rancher, etc., EKS, GK. You can access all these different environments through that one single pane of glass. Look at the various metrics, whether it is in the cluster, whether it is in the nodes. Then look at the workloads, network, storage, configuration, namespaces, and then manipulate all these objects, right? But as I said, also Lens is continuously improving. So we have new features coming into Lens. One of the new features that came end of last year was LDK, so local development Kubernetes. This is a local Kubernetes that runs in your laptop, that is managed by Lens, and that allows you to start your development process, and test your development within Lens without having to spin up a cluster either locally or remotely, right? It's all part of the Lens experience. Very recently, Lens was also delivered. Lens team also delivered Security Center. So the Security Center is now the hub where you would have better visibility on your security posture. So basically, you would be able to scan your images. You would be able to look at the roles and cluster roles definition and see whether you have any issues within these definitions, right? And more to come. I've seen some of the very exciting things that they are thinking about, and definitely a lot of good things coming to Lens very, very soon. But Lens also gives you the capability to extend. For example, resource map is an extension, right? And as I'm showing on the screen, through that extension, I can easily view the map of my applications. So what is running, what are the dependencies in between the different objects, and well, this is a visual tool, right? That basically helps to manipulate the different and helps manipulate the different objects. But like for example, at Mirantis, we have developed an IoT management extension. Flux CD has an extension. Starboard for security has extensions, so you can build your own extension. It's all based on the Chrome framework, so very, very convenient for that. Opinionated stacks are great, and you can have them without login, inflexibility, and roadmap blocks. This one is also very interesting, the third point, because again, when we look at what we have right now and what we can access, we can see that we have two families, right? The first one is quite opinionated stacks, great stacks, but very opinionated, looking at forcing the way that you are to use the cluster, right? And not only the cluster, but the way that you will be onboarding the applications, also how you are going to build the applications, how you are going to expose these applications, how you're going to handle the marketplace and all that, right? Then on the other side, and that's the heaviest bag, I would say, is the more open and flexible solutions, GKE, AKS, EKS, but also you would see solutions like Mirantis Kubernetes Engine and K0s, which is fully open source. And when you look at your card and you start to look at that CNCF landscape that we saw earlier, we can fill that card quite a lot, right? And once you have filled that card, you've made your shopping list, and you look at where you're going to drop these components. It's definitely made to run on these non-opinionated open source solutions. Because underneath, you're not logged into an operating system, for example, or you're not logged into a CNI or an SDN or a way of doing storage, or a way of handling your hardware, for example, right? It's just an open solution that can run anywhere, and basically allows to integrate with these open source components. So why would I select Calico, for example? Why not select Cilium? Or why not put Multus and then add multiple interfaces, including Calico and Cilium at the same time, right? So all of these would be possible if you have the use case. The same for the CI/CD. Why do I need to build my application in one very, very specific way, which would work only on one given platform, and not have one generic pipeline for my CI and one generic pipeline for my CD that can run across all my different platforms, right? So not get into that situation where you do things only in one way for one given platform, but you have that capability to do the same thing across all the different platforms. So portability is key here again. So for point 4 now, you can have reasonable freedom of choice too, right? So it all depends. There's that right balance between that whole landscape, that full picture, and then wanting to get back into a more reasonable space where you know that the components have been vetted, tested on the field long enough to be robust and running in production, right? You don't always want to be on the bleeding edge and take the latest and greatest and be the at the end of the day the guinea pig. You do want to be able to for some of the key features rely on experience. So in that space, and this is what we are doing with Lens Autopilot. Actually, we look at that choice picture. Any infrastructure, any Linux distribution, any standard and non-standard Kubernetes, right? So any infrastructure means can run on-prem, can run in the public cloud, wherever we have resources. Any Linux distribution, the main ones, right? Ubuntu, Red Hat, CentOS, Oracle Linux, Rocky, and SUSE, right? We can select these and various versions of these, Red Hat Enterprise 8, 9, Ubuntu 22.04, Rocky Linux, right? We just select the versions that we want to, or we need to use. And then any type of distribution. So do it yourself, non-standard with OpenShift, and then standard with Mirantis Kubernetes Engine, AKS, EKS, GKE, and Tanzu, right? So that's the starting point. And as from there, we look at how we need to push these components in the same manner. So here we are looking at various families, but I'm going to concentrate on 6 families. The first one is CI/CD, right? As I said, you want to unify the way that you are building your pipelines and pushing your code and then images towards these standard and non-standard environments. So basically, in that case, we would be selecting a few components from that landscape, but we know that these are very strong components. Here we are talking about Flux, we are talking about GitLab, we are talking about Argo CD, we are talking about Helm, and we are talking about GitHub Actions, right? We do want to have these components being able to be integrated as easily as possible on the environment. Now we look at logging, monitoring, and alerting. We do have that full typical stack that is available, whether it is Grafana stack with Grafana, Prometheus, Grafana Loki, for example. But also we do want to have that metering, not metering, sorry, but logging capability with Loki. There is also Goldie Docs that we would want to include in that space to monitor the way that our resources are being used, right, and give recommendations on how to improve the way that these resources are being used. Like, for example, I'm running pods. I just scan all these pods within a given namespace and get the recommendation whether the amount of CPU and memory that I'm using is adapted for the cluster based on the analysis of the pod. In terms of networking, we would have Calico, for example, and how to configure the various layers of the CNI and Nginx, Ingress, and Istio. And security, the last item. And we did a couple of webinars a couple of weeks ago focused on that, where we explain how we are integrating Keycloak, OPA, the Aqua suite with Kubebench, KubeHunter, and Starboard, but also Falco and Crane, right? And finally, add-ons. And this is where some non-open source components can come in. if required, for various reasons, because some organizations have already selected some logging or metering components like Datadog or Dynatrace, or they have selected backup and recovery with Tridio, or doing service mesh with Tetrate, or they need to use Sysdig or Palo Alto Prisma Cloud for security reasons, right? So in that case, there is that add-on capability. So all of these components are the components that we typically use on our clusters to do CI/CD, for logging, monitoring, and alerting, for security, and for networking. They work very, very well. We know that we can deploy these across all these different environments and operating system in various combinations. It's a tool. It's a checkbox. So you would select which components that you want to enable or not enable, and most of them are definitely open source, right? And that's what we're looking for. The interesting point about that also is that it's all about GitOps, right? So it's not about deploying these components once and then getting issues to maintain them, update them, or patch them when required. But it's a lot about the day two, because again, if we come back to the initial point, which is how we are going to manage these different environments at scale, various environments on-prem, in the cloud, various scales for various functions and different functionalities within these clusters. How can we ease the operations around these platforms? And it comes a little bit around the notions around platform engineering, right? And for that, we enforce the GitOps approach. We use FluxCD under the hood, and this is part of the Lens Autopilot experience. Lens Autopilot leverages FluxCD, and through FluxCD, then we manage and maintain all of these components. We manage the definition of these components, and then the configuration of these components, and then we are also able to patch these, right? So, for example, in that case, we can specify very specific functionalities in very specific clusters across through Lens Autopilot, but we can also have a uniform view of in terms of configuration or in terms of features across multiple clusters running in multiple environments, right? For example, security, this is something which is typical. We would want to align across all our clusters. So you can change one in one single place and then push, and then it applies across all different environments at the same time, right? Because you have Flux that reconciles the states. But you can have for some of the clusters you deploy Argo, and some of the clusters you would deploy FluxCD, for example, right? It depends on how you want to tackle this, but you have that flexibility with Lens Autopilot and the way that we are handling the Flux project. You have that capability to steer in one way or the other how you are going to deploy these features. So 5, you will never walk alone. And for Liverpool fans, this is one of the greatest phrase out there. One of the main challenge that we see and we continue to see, and it is getting harder and harder, is the skills, right? Available skills, the capability to hire good skills and retain them, right? That's a steep challenge. When we look at some of the surveys out there, this one is from March 2021, Kubernetes in the Enterprise Survey. Two of the metrics that were highlighted were that 38% of the developers were extremely burned out, and burned out because they had not only to do development, but they also had to manage clusters, manage the way that they integrate their software within these clusters, and all the things around these clusters, right? And 51% of these developers said that they would be looking for something else, right? So it increases again that challenge of hiring and retaining, because even the one that are in the space are looking to do something else, and you have competition, right, in between all these organizations. But organizations are also looking at investing in training, right? Getting more and more people trained on Kubernetes, so that the adoption is increased, and that's also super positive. But looking at that main challenge, then you can then also work with partners that can assist you in the best way possible, right? And Mirantis is definitely one of them. These are some of the certifications we have, for example, which allows us to work with quite a broad space, because we are in that space for a very long time right now. We have the certifications around security that allows us to work with DoD, and we also support standard around ISO 27001 and TISAX to manage all the industrial information security, right? So we are CNCF certified. Our Kubernetes distributions are CNCF certified, and we also provide training, right? So we are a training partner. So if you look at now how you can extend that concept of working with someone and how far you can go, this is where we at Mirantis, we start to talk about the ZeroOps platforms. And what is a ZeroOps platform? This is for us something which is very, very key, right? And it addresses that need of, or that pain of, not finding enough skilled talents that can deliver code as fast as possible with the highest quality possible. And for that, what we tend to do, or what we do with our customers, is that we do the ops so that you do the apps, right? So we manage these clusters across these different environments, whether it is on-prem or in the public cloud. We use the tools that I showed earlier, through Lens Autopilot. So we combine the power of Lens and the resources of open source and automation through GitOps across all these different environments to improve the developer experience, to provide real-time alerting and monitoring, to provide proactive security, and to scale out across the enterprise, right? To provide these dashboards and visual reports to manage cost and chargebacks. All of that would then allow the developers to get more time to concentrate on building the code, which at the end of the day is what the enterprises want the developers to do, right? Build the code as fast as possible with the highest quality possible. Now for the point 6 and the last point, because it is the combination of all these little things. Yes. So the point 6 is that at the end of the day, it is the combination of all these things that would make you look at why you should go to non-opinionated and more open source Kubernetes distribution, right? So constraint choice is good, but this constraint, we talked about that. We explained that I explained that we do have that large CNCF landscape which is available, and through that CNCF landscape, you would want to take the best and as much of the best you can across these different components. But you also want to have the choice in terms of where you want to run your cluster, which operating system you want to use to run your cluster, and which distribution you want to use to run your cluster. Complexity, hiding a pretty web UI looks nice, but it doesn't make everything easy. Again, here you want to have something that is multi-environment, multi-cloud, that can be used collaboratively, so that you can share access to your clusters without exposing your clusters to security breaches, right? So, for example, with Lens, you do have the Lens space that allows you to do that. That allows you to share access to clusters within space to team members, and you don't expose at any point your kubeconfig file. Opinionated stacks are great, and you can have them without lock-in, inflexible, and roadblocks. Again, this is related to the previous points. You take these components from the open source, you put them into your clusters. You don't want to figure out every time whether that will work or not, or whether that will be compatible with a given storage backend, or compatible with a network backend, or compatible with the available hardware. You do want to be able to run them anywhere. And you can have reasonable freedom of choice too, right? If you don't want to use the full picture, having that reasonable freedom is also good, simply because sometimes you do want to take a little bit less risk, select the best, because everyone knows that's what should be used. It has been probably tested. It has been running on production for enough time, and that's what you want to use. Whether it is for CI/CD, whether it is for security, whether it is for logging, monitoring, alerting, and whether it is for networking, right? And finally, you will never walk alone. Yes, you have companies like Mirantis that can help you, fix some of the pains that you have around having access to resources and freeing up time for your developers so that they can do more development. And then we will be doing more the operation side, using tooling, open source tooling, automation, and enabling the proper best practices around the CI/CD piece, the networking piece, the security piece, and the logging, monitoring, and alerting piece. All right, then. I think it was a bit shorter than what we typically do. Thank you very much for your time. I wish you a good rest of your day, or your afternoon, or your evening, and looking forward to see you for our next webinar. Thank you very much.